So it is normal and understandable that people are experiencing fear, anxiety, and extreme stress in the wake of the current pandemic. Added to the fear of contracting the virus, there have been significant changes to our daily lives. Our movements have been restricted. We now work from home. Homeschooling has become the order of the day, and lack of physical contact with family members, friends, and colleagues have just added to our stress levels. Thus, it is important that we take care of our mental health as well as our physical health. In order to maintain a positive frame of mind during this pandemic, we have a subject matter expert joining us today, Dr. Preeti Reddy. Dr. Preeti is a practicing mental health professional with an MD in psychiatry and a postgraduate diploma in medical law and ethics. She has over 10 years of experience in the field of psychiatry and has been working at NIMHANS for the last 5 years. She is currently pursuing her PhD in bipolar disorders, and her areas of interest are depression, bipolar disorders, pharmacology, biological psychiatry, and neurocognition. Dr. Preeti, it's an honor and privilege to have you with us today. Thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule and joining us. Without any further delay, I hand over the session to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noor, and it was a very wonderful, to actually give this talk. And thank you and Dr. Saud for this opportunity. I'm glad to be talking to all the participants at this hour when it's the need. When I mean, there's a lot of talk everywhere about COVID and its related physical health effects that happen, but when it comes to mental health, it's somewhere being neglected, and that's because that's not the primary focus right now, because it's all about what we see in media is about people dying and losing their eye, losing their hearing capacity, losing I mean a lot of these physical effects which have been emphasized, which are rightly being emphasized currently, right? So where somewhere it's also very important for us to focus on mental health as well, like you have rightly already introduced. So further moving on, so like Dr. Noor has already told, it's today we are talking about COVID and mental health. So to move on, just a minute. I think my slides are not moving. Yeah, sorry. Yes. So can you hear me, Dr. Noor?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, yes. Yeah, okay. So today's presentation, I thought we'll focus on the following. The flow of the presentation would go this way. So we'll first focus on the common psychiatric issues that we are, as psychiatrists or mental health professionals, that we are seeing in our everyday practice currently, and the long-term consequences of COVID on mental health, and then about briefly of what are the probable etiologies of these psychiatric morbidities, and then strategies to how to deal with these common mental health issues, and then how we have to focus on enhancing our positive mental health in the current time. Now, briefly to introduce, the COVID-19 outbreak has created an unprecedented crisis in modern healthcare systems, which we all are aware of. On January 30th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared this COVID-19 a public and international health emergency. So fear, health anxiety, apprehension, uncertainty, loneliness, mass hysteria are the common offshoots since COVID-19 has begun, as billions are quarantined at their homes, borders are sealed, and economies are crashing down. The incidence of depression, anxiety, and suicidality have been reported across many countries and compounded by the effects of lockdown. Now, the common presentations. So here I would just give a brief, examples of some of the cases that we see. So, recently we saw this lady who came to us, and she was very worried and concerned and feeling sad most of the time about the current situation, about how things are going and how her life is not normal anymore. And she is a usual, banking person who works in a small bank in a small city in India. So her concern was that she's not able to sleep. most of the times, and then she's always preoccupied with the thoughts about what is going to happen next and how this things can be sorted out when life is going to get back to normal. But when it comes to her work and other things, she's going regularly to work, she's doing well at home, her house responsibilities, and even at her work. So in such a scenario, this would be something what we call it as an adjustment disorder. So these are emotional disturbances that arise in the context of a significant life change or a stressful event, as all of us are going through now. So here, a person can have sadness of mood, anxiety or worry, fear of contracting an infection, or a combination of all of these. The persistent preoccupation with illness worry will be there, inability to cope, or feeling of giving up, and some degree of dysfunction, sleep and appetite disturbances, but not gross. In most, the symptoms will remit after the stressor is removed. Some of these individuals with ongoing issues might progress to go on to a depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder. The next scenario is depressive disorders per se. So, a little different scenario from what we spoke about the lady in the previous case. So, we had a gentleman who works in a government office. And he, even during lockdown, because his office would come in essential services, would have to go to work regularly. And he was provided with the mask and other safety things. But still, he was constantly worried and always scared that he would contract COVID, and then that would spread to his family members, and because of which, it would cause loss of life. So because of this worry, he would not be able to concentrate in his work, and also sleep was impaired, his appetite was impaired, so much so that he started feeling that, there's no point in working, maybe he should stop working completely, and also started having suicidal thoughts. So here is a scenario where we would diagnose this person with a depressive disorder or a major depressive disorder. Like as I've mentioned in this particular slide, this could be precipitated by COVID-19, or it could be secondary to the COVID-19 related stress or other related problems. Like as already mentioned, he has low mood and loss of capacity to enjoy things and very decreased energy as well. And other things like tiredness, a lower attention span, lower self-esteem, and mainly death wishes and suicidal thoughts, or thoughts about, or sometimes a patient even might make attempts to end his life. So these are serious situations when these people need to take help from a mental health professional, or when other doctors or other fellow health professionals are seeing them, they need to refer them to a mental health professional. Another important and serious concern that we have seen during these COVID-19 pandemic time is substance use disorder. In our country, it's mainly alcohol and tobacco, so that's why I have mentioned those two. So individuals may use substances to overcome social isolation as a way of pleasure seeking or to reduce anxiety and depression. Behavioral addiction with internet also will be on the upsurge during these times, because everything is online. Like this session itself per se. And for children or youngsters, schools and colleges are online, and work for adults is from online. So it's a behavioral addiction is a very, very common thing that we are seeing nowadays. The most common and expected pattern is that of increased use with some dysfunction, wherein what is the dysfunction here is that most of the time is spent on this, even when it's not for work or for study, and the other necessary activities of the day are neglected because of being addicted to internet. Now, harmful use may also occur when we are talking about substances, which means there is a damage to health due to alcohol or tobacco. In this case, harmful effects could be physical, like the liver or lung related issues, or mental, as worsening of mental health issues like anxiety or depression. Continued use of these substances can lead to dependence or addiction, what we call as, which is characterized by a strong desire to drink or smoke. Difficulties in controlling the use, persistence of drinking despite knowing the harmful consequences, a higher importance is given to these substances than other activities, what we call as salience, increased tolerance and a physical withdrawal state as well the person can get into. So we have also over the last 1 year we have also seen a lot of withdrawal emergencies during the pandemic. And this was also during the lockdown times, when there was no availability of alcohol, when these patients of alcohol dependent syndrome go into withdrawal. And these were one of the most common emergencies that we used to see in our psychiatry emergencies. And then people can present with generalized anxiety disorder. So this is characterized by excessive worry, persistent free-floating anxiety, which is not restricted to any particular environmental circumstances. Person is always nervous, tense, restless, feels on the edge, is irritable, muscles feeling tight and tense, poor concentration, sleep disturbances, and physical symptoms also like excessive sweating, feeling lightheaded, palpitations, dizziness, and epigastric discomfort. Studies have also reported prevalence of generalized anxiety disorder between 25 to 40% in general public. Next, there can be other anxiety disorders like panic disorder. Now, panic disorder is characterized by recurrent unexpected attacks of severe anxiety, which we call it as panic attacks in psychiatry terms, that reach a peak within a few minutes and last for a few more minutes. And this is associated with the fear of having more attacks, which we call as anticipatory anxiety or avoidance of triggers of panic attacks. Many of these patients might feel that they're about to die or lose control or go mad, and they end up in a medical emergency setting. So, physicians also need to be on the lookout for such patients when somebody is presenting with these, what we call respiratory or cardiac symptoms. There needs to be a suspicion also about people might present with a panic disorder as well, considering the current anxiety associated with the pandemic. Phobias, again, these are also anxiety that might emerge in certain well defined situations. Most commonly, certain people can excessively develop fear for crowds in the wake of COVID-19 due to the fear of, acquiring the infection. If there is excessive avoidance of crowd to the point of being housebound, this can be called as agoraphobia. In all these phobic states, anxiety symptoms are triggered only in particular situations and are accompanied by strong avoidance of the situation that triggers fears. And then obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, OCD is also expected to increase in the aftermath of COVID or during COVID. To ensure that subjects reduce transmission of infection, there has been now the public is being bombarded with a lot of health messages to wash their hands repeatedly, to reduce contamination, etc. So subjects who already have OCD also experience repeated thoughts of contamination. These are contamination obsessions, what we call, and wash repeatedly to reduce these anxieties, compulsions, what we call. So these are the symptoms of OCD per se. So these subjects often recognize that these thoughts are senseless, but they cannot control them. Due to the fear of contracting COVID-19 through these fomite transmissions, such a persistent fear is likely to predispose to severe OCD in some otherwise vulnerable individuals. And these cases, washing can persist for many hours in a day with significant distress and dysfunction. Now, contamination obsessions and washing compulsions may relapse following the pandemic in remitted cases as well. And healthcare workers are at an increased risk for the illness compared to general public. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, what we call, this is a rare disorder, but people who are living in hard-hit areas frequently reported symptoms similar to PTSD, up to 7 to 9% in a study which was done by Liu et al. In 2020, and they also found female preponderance. The social isolation, stigma associated with the illness, and separation from family members, in case of turning positive, can amount to trauma and may present with PTSD. The frequent recollection of these memories associated with anxiety, there can also be negative cognitions, mood subsymptoms like low mood, etc., along with sleep disturbances. Now, suicide as a symptom of the pandemic can very well aggravate all the precipitating factors of suicide, from social isolation to the financial burden secondary to this to the hard hit economy. The social causes of suicide are also exaggerated. The underlying psychological causes such as mood disorders, substance use, etc., may worsen secondary to loneliness, social isolation, travel restriction, to seek consultation, as well as fear of contracting infection. Improper reporting of suicide by media can also trigger the suicidal ideations as well. It is a challenge to address this issue and to effective prevention of loss. I would want to point out that last year, in 2020, during the pandemic, there was a very important media news that was. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Preeti.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So about this particular Bollywood actor who committed suicide and ended his life. So during this time, we had a lot of calls because in Nimhans we had started also a telephone helpline. And also, we had many youngsters who came to our emergencies who were really seriously affected with this repeated news on media about this young actor's suicide. A lot of depressed patients who had suicidal thoughts also ended up making attempts. So it's a very important responsibility that the media has about communicating about such things. And when I say media, I don't only mean the news media. Nowadays, because of social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, all these are also media. So all of us also need to be very careful when we are forwarding something on our WhatsApp or sharing something on our Facebook status as well, because it might not affect everybody so much, but some people are really affected by this. Then severe mental illness. So the emergence of severe mental illness as a direct consequence of pandemic is unlikely. However, in individuals already suffering from such conditions, when I say severe mental illness, I mean one example is schizophrenia, the other being bipolar disorders. So there could be a worsening or relapse predominantly due to the delay in consultation for medication refill owing to the travel restrictions and worry of contracting infection from hospital. Now this was another scenario which we faced, like after the lockdowns were lifted last year, we had an insurge of a lot of these severely mentally ill people who had come back to us with a relapse because they could not get medications and they could not come for consultations. Now, these common symptoms of severe mental illness are unexplained irritability, aggressive behavior, talking to self, smiling to self, being suspicious about others, hearing voices when nobody is around, having false beliefs, or poor self care. Now, this is about the common psychiatric presentations that we would get post-COVID or during a COVID pandemic that we have been seeing. Now, what are the long-term consequences of such a pandemic? Now, some of the reviews have shown these are the percentages from the reviews. This is from a recent Lancet article that was published. So, mood disorder, it's around 13.6, anxiety disorders, 17.3, psychotic disorders, 1.4, and substance use disorders was 6.5. And insomnia, per se, not secondary to any other psychiatric disorder, was 5.4. And these are all percentages in over a period of 6 months, which was studied, and outcomes of patients who have been affected by COVID-19. Now, those who had certain manifestations during the acute phase, like severe respiratory distress syndrome with prolonged ventilation, and neurological manifestations like delirium, disturbed consciousness, agitation, or who had a CVA, hypoxic encephalopathy, and encephalitis, are at a higher risk of attention, memory, and other cognitive disturbances post recovery also. Even in the uninfected general public, the severity of this pandemic has led to increased mental health concerns like insomnia, anxiety, stress, depressive symptoms, which are commonly reported. Another thing which we have started seeing is post COVID brain fog, a state of reduced cognitive functions, which has been increasingly seen nowadays. There's no other underlying psychiatric symptoms per se. Manic syndromes and symptoms, but not syndromal mania, like lability of mood, irritability, pressurized speech, euphoria, were commonly noted in earlier coronavirus related outbreaks as well. Many of these subthreshold symptoms were attributed to the corticosteroid therapy administered to manage the symptoms. Yes, so some of the mood disorders can be precipitated or can be secondary to the steroid therapy as well. Insomnia is one more putative common adversity that can be anticipated as a long term consequence and could be a part of other neuropsychiatric syndrome, or it can be an isolation can be manifesting. So chronic insomnia can mediate the pathogenesis of other neuropsychiatric complications as well. People struggling to cope with mental health issues consequent to COVID related issues may consume alcohol, tobacco for immediate relief, and this can go on to become an addiction, like I've already mentioned. Long-term recovery is invariably observed to be associated with high frequency of persistent fatigue in coronavirus infection. This could lead to regaining the efficacy in previous employment and recovery getting further delayed. And that leads to a lot of psychosocial consequences. So it has been related to worsening of pre-existing mental health conditions in most parts of the world, relapse of psychotic disorders, affective disorders, and anxiety disorders. The stress and burden in frontline workers needs a special focus. They are in increased risk of getting infected, and due to increased risk of exposure to higher viral loads may have severe clinical symptoms as well. The stigma and avoidance, in addition to the workload, may lead to an early burnout in this group. This creates a congenial environment of development of a spectrum of mental disorders. Even the family members of essential service providers are suggested to be at higher risk of mental health issues during COVID. The prolonged separation due to workload and as a means of reducing the risk of infection to the near ones could have adverse mental issues as well. Children are more susceptible in these situations and could develop a gamut of neurodevelopmental conditions as well. Now, just briefly focusing on what could be the underlying etiology of the psychiatric morbidity. So, focusing on the biological hypothesis, so the viruses may enter the brain through angiotensin receptors in olfactory tubercles and can replicate in the neurons. And this, effect that it has on the brain itself can manifest as psychiatric manifestations. Cytokine storms can cause inflammatory reactions and it can cause endotheliopathy and disrupt the blood-brain barrier. And this can increase the cerebrovascular accidents by impaired blood clotting mechanism. Then autoimmune response to the antibodies are usually detected in CSF, and one study confirmed the presence of SARS-CoV virus 2. Medications used to treat COVID, like a few antivirals, chloroquine, and steroids, have the potential to induce psychiatric symptoms as well. Now, what are the psychological, etiologies? Social distancing, quarantine, isolation, there are key preventive measures in containing the spread, but this may lead to poor social emotional support as well. Unemployment, economic financial burden are other things. Excess concern on the health due to the potentially fatal nature of the infection and traumatic memories of suffering from severe physical symptoms can also lead to it. Grief, very important, due to loss of a close relative and significant others. Stigma towards the infected person could lead to stress, shame, social avoidance, spiraling down of mental health consequences. And stress due to increased burden and concern of infecting others in healthcare workers and other supporting essential service providers. Social etiology would be reduced healthcare accessibility to other health conditions due to a strain on the healthcare system, that is, focusing on the response to the pandemic currently. Excess negative news in the mass media and social media, and slowdown of the global economy. Next, we'll move on to what are the strategies to deal with the common mental health issues that we are seeing these days. The first step is understanding and being aware of the negative mental health consequences of the evolving pandemic, and it's a very essential first step. Next is sensitizing the general public about the common mental health concerns and information regarding the available mental health services. This is a need of the hour. A fine balance is necessary between social isolation during a pandemic and the quality time spent with family and caregivers of mentally ill individuals. Social interaction is generally considered to help to prevent mental health issues. Improving the accessibility to mental health care and mental health well-being centers, adapting technology in healthcare provisions, improving awareness on mental health issues, early detection, reducing the duration of untreated illness would be crucial steps in mitigating the long-term consequences on mental health of the pandemic. For frontline workers, simple measures like hydration, optimal breaks, sleep hygiene, safe social gatherings, confidential mental health support services in close liaison with the administration would prevent long-term adverse consequences. In infected individuals, in close liaison with frontline team, efforts to be made to screen and address the common mental health concerns. Post-COVID rehabilitation centers should consist of a multidisciplinary team, including a psychiatrist, for effective identification and timely intervention for these psychiatric concerns. Systemic efforts should focus on appealing to clear and transparent communication and curtailing the spread of anxiety-provoking misinformation. Some simple psychological strategies. First thing is principles of self-care. The principles of self-care can be practiced by any person, and it helps to ensure optimum functioning physically, emotionally, and socially. First thing, all of us need to have a routine. Though our usual routine of work or school or whatever is disrupted, in wherever we are at home, maybe still we need to have a routine. So recognize your emotions and accept that some emotions may be normal in a given stressful situation. If you're feeling overwhelmed with emotions, discuss with a friend or a loved one. Take breaks whenever possible, from work, from study, whatever. Have limited social media exposure, very important. Give importance to your sleep and try and get it as much as possible. Try to do physical exercise and meditation. Be mindful, but do not try to focus too much on the future as there are significant changes that one is facing every day. Second is handling the stress related to quarantine and isolation. So, social isolation is associated with significant psychological distress and can impact the functioning of the individual. What are the steps that can be taken? So here it's about handling distress in people whom you know. It could be friends, or it could be if it's other medical professionals, it could be the patients that whom you're seeing regularly, or it could be in your colleagues who are other frontline workers, or it could be for yourself. So we need to validate the feelings of anxiety and stress and use a non-judgmental approach towards the person who is facing these. Check on the concerns related to quarantine and isolation, like fear about own health and health of loved ones, stress of being monitored, the anger and frustration of being stigmatized. This is very high, let me tell you. Guilt feelings about not being able to perform normal work, worries about family members and their safety, and any other worries that they can have. Re-emphasize on why they are in a quarantine and why it is needed. We need to allay the anxiety about health by providing reliable sources of information. Advise these people to be in touch with family members over the telephone and social media. If they are being overwhelmed by the social media messages on the pandemic, advise them to take a break from the same. Ask them to focus on keeping a routine for themselves while in isolation. Encourage to do physical exercises with advice from the treating doctors. Encourage them to pursue a hobby, start a new indoor activity, keep themselves occupied. It could be an internet based video game, books, games like chess, cooking, craft, learning online, whatever they might be interested in. Advise them to practice relaxation exercise, namely meditation, abdominal breathing. One such example which I just wanted to put in is most easy and most simple one that everybody can do is relaxation or abdominal breathing exercises. You just have to sit in a comfortable position on the ground or on a chair. Remove all those wallets or belts or whatever you have on you. Relax your shoulders. Keep both your hands to your lower belly with, both two of your middle fingers touching the belly. Close your eyes and take a long, deep, gentle breath and send this long and deep breath down to your belly so your stomach expands. Your shoulders continue to be relaxed. So you should find that your middle fingers naturally move apart slightly as the belly expands with the breath. When you exhale or breathe out slowly, now you can feel the belly naturally draws inwards as the breath exits out the body and the middle finger slide to touch again. So do this abdominal breathing a minimum of 10 times. Inhale and exhale very slowly. So this helps a lot when you're feeling very scared or feeling very tense or anxious. So this is like an immediate relaxation. It gives an immediate relaxation. It's like taking an anti-anxiety pill. Now, a few slides on enhancing positive mental health in the times of a pandemic. So these are a few slides which are very interesting, which are put up on the WHO mental health segment, which I found. So this is about the frontline and other essential workers experiencing extreme stress and fatigue. So if you're exhausted, detached, and unable to focus, talk to a supervisor about your concerns, and you need to take some time out to rest. If you're working on the front line, you need to, be stressful, difficult. It's normal to feel overwhelmed and frustrated. Just because you're a frontline worker or a healthcare worker doesn't mean that you should be up and about for 24/7. Talking about your feelings with somebody you trust will definitely help. So you need to keep in mind healthy ways of coping with loss, right? You need to keep a journal of your thoughts and feelings, which we call it as a thought diary. Learn and practice meditation or just simple breathing exercises like I have told you right now. If you know of somebody who's teaching it online or whatever, do it in an authentic way. Or yoga if you can do it, or just simple breathing relaxation exercise will do. Talk to someone that you trust, then help one another, and this reminds us that we are not alone during this time. People diagnosed with COVID-19 require compassionate care. We need to help them stay connected with their loved ones over phone or video messaging can provide comfort during isolation. Losing someone we love is always difficult. So our heart goes out to families who've lost their loved ones. So, helping them is also very important here. So feeling low can lead to withdrawing from usual activities. This is what you should not be doing. So we need to overcome this cycle of inactivity. So you do your household chores. You have hobbies like gardening, or, yoga, painting, drawing, whatever. Like I mentioned, healthy living habits like doing exercises regularly, be active. Healthy eating habits, eat home cooked food, eat more of fruits, vegetables, healthy food. Online connections for social connections too. While you're staying physically apart, stay connected over a phone or a video call with your family members. Again, for frontline workers, they need can maintain positive mental health when they are working. Work rotation between high and low stress roles. Access to mental health services for these people is very important. Proper rest, exercise, healthy food for them, and communication with loved ones as well. So these essential workers face long hours, heavy workloads, and potential stigma and discrimination. If they go unchecked, this can lead to fatigue, distress, and burnout. So they need a lot of support from mental health professionals. Quality time at home is good for mental health. So instead of all of us cribbing that, we are at home and our routine is spoiled, it's a good thing. We all are at home. So we are getting a lot of time to spend with our families. So we'll do something good, spend quality time with our own family members, which we will not be getting once we are all back to the usual routine. It's normal to feel fearful and anxious during this time. Talking about your feelings will lessen this distress. So please speak out. Again, like I mentioned, not only adults, we should inculcate the habit of having some hobbies or learning something new in children as well. Maybe drawing, singing, dancing, whichever creative activity the child likes, which minimizes the screen time. That's very important because all children are stuck to the screen for their school. So other than that, I think all other activities that they do should be off the screen. So it's very important to have open communication, time management, and balance and productivity at work while maintaining a good mental health. So choose a limited time each day when you're going to check on COVID-19 updates. It's very important that you're up to date about what's happening around in the world. But again, it's not good for you to do it the entire day. So constantly listening to media coverage can make you more anxious and upset. Even while you're studying at home, there needs to be enough rest and sleep, regular physical activity, healthy food, some deep breathing exercises, staying connected, and some breaks as well. These are the references which I've mainly focused on. Most of the content is from two of the books that we have written from Department of Psychiatry from NIMHANS, which focuses on how mainly it's the guidelines and how general medical or specialized mental health care services should focus on mental health in the times of COVID, and another updates that was written by our department colleagues and our consultants, which was an update which was published, and some important review articles which have been recently published based on mental health and psychiatric issues during the times of COVID. So I think together we can get through these difficult times and uncertain times. So thank you all for your patient listening. So I think we can open the forum now for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Preeti. That was very, very informative, especially the breathing techniques that you taught us, the abdominal breathing, very easy to implement. But we have a lot of questions in the chat box.
Yes.
So I'll just try and read out a few questions and we can take them one by one.
Yes.
Okay, Mariam has a question. She said she was COVID positive and now she has developed OCD and anxiety, and that's really killing her. So
Okay.
give a few suggestions to her how she can deal with her anxiety disorder and OCD.
So that's what, again, to give suggestion, I am not sure if Mariam is self-diagnosing or she has been diagnosed by a professional and if she's on treatment or not on treatment. But still, if Mariam feels that, she has OCD, she must have read about it already. And she needs to, I think the best thing to do is reach out to a mental health professional. It could be online. Nowadays, a lot of people are providing online services. So,
I think what's happening is many of them are self-diagnosing themselves and
Yes.
they are saying that they have OCD and they have anxiety disorder and
Yes,
panic attacks.
that's something which is happening quite a lot. But still, if somebody, if they're picking up small symptoms on their own, that's a good thing. It's not wrong to approach a mental health professional, especially when everybody is so easy to reach right now. They can easily consult somebody online and they can get reassured. They can discuss with them in detail whether they have a diagnosable condition or not. That is the advice that I would want to give.
Fantastic. And Mariam, further to your question, I'd like to say that we at Global Golden Breeze Foundation, as well as United Medical Mission, have a helpline, and we have psychologists on board. So, in case you need to reach out for us for help, please, just dial into the number, and we'd be very happy to provide any kind of professional assistance that's required. Okay, we have another question from Irfan Ahmed. Irfan, I'm not very sure I understand your question. You say your mother was COVID positive, but now she's stable. She's about 50 years old and she's taking that is fun. You're asking us, will it affect her health? Is that your question? Irfan, can you hear us?
Yeah, ma'am, I can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, so if you can just explain your question, Dr. Preeti will be able to address it better.
Yeah, ma'am. My mom was 50 years old. She's a positive. She got CT scan score almost 14.
Okay.
I need a suggestion. She's stable now, but I want to know she can take a beta leaf or what? It can affect to his lungs or what in later? That is the main question, ma'am.
No, I mean, she takes betel leaf as an occasional thing, Mr. Irfan, or is it that every day she has to take it?
Yeah, she's taking every day.
Since several years, you mean?
Several years. She's taking from past 30 or 40 years from past itself, ma'am.
So betel leaf as such is not known to be a substance of abuse, but most of the people who take betel leaf take it along with areca nuts.
Correct. She's not taking the nuts, ma'am. That one. Only betel leaf as well as some.
Sorry?
She's taking only betel leaf.
Only leaf.
Leaf, yeah.
Okay, so betel leaf as such is not considered as a substance of abuse, and I don't know of any effect that it can have over the lungs.
Okay.
So that's all. That's what I can say.
And one more thing, ma'am. For the oxygen saturation is almost to 94 now. It is a good signal or what, ma'am? From past 5 to 6 days, I am tracking. Oxygen saturation is 93, 94. The 1 week or 2 week back, it was almost 92, 93.
So if it is coming up, then it's a good sign. But since her CORAD score based on a CT scan you said was 14, I hope you are in consultation with a physician or a respiratory medicine expert.
Yeah, ma'am. Last week also we have a video consultation with our doctor.
Okay.
We have taken the report for D-dimer. It got normal as well as CRP. It was a normal range in 1.
Okay.
And CBC, ma'am, that white blood count was almost 17,400.
Okay. Okay.
It was very much almost 6,000.
Okay.
Again, we consulted with doctor. He told that no need to worry. She is stable now. We are taking this 6 minutes walking test, ma'am, every day.
Okay. Okay.
Irfan, I think you have it under control now. So if it is if it's any mental health, you can let us know, and Dr. Preeti can address that.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
We have another question, Dr. Preeti. Someone who's not listed their name, it just says Samsung over here. And they say they have a problem of nail biting. And they don't like it. And I think the person is doing this because of stress. And she's tried a lot, or he has tried a lot to stop, but is unable to stop themselves. So any quick tips and suggestions that you have?
Yes. So we have a lot of these kind of symptoms that some of us, I think many of us would have, like nail biting or hair pulling when we get stressed. Okay, so for these kind of things, generally we would advise something called as a habit reversal therapy. Now, the entire thing cannot be done over this session, but then in this, the main focus in a habit reversal therapy is that when you're biting your nail, the activity that you have to do when you bite your nail, you need to do the reverse of that. So here, doing the reverse would be like, if you have to bite your nail, you have to take your fingers to your mouth. So during that time, maybe either you tie your hand with something so that you can't take your fingers to your mouth, or you keep your hands engaged with something else so that your hand nails don't go to your mouth, something like that, briefly saying. So we call this habit reversal. So whenever you get the urge to do that, you have to do an activity so that which will negate the movement of that particular activity which you can tend to do when you're stressed. I hope I could give you some tips.
Yes, that was very useful, Dr. Preeti. Thank you. There's one more question. Somebody has a doubt on the principles of self-care that you had
Okay.
shared.
Okay.
This is EU, it says over here. It's just written as EYU. So, EU,
Okay.
can you please share your question and elaborate on what your doubt was? Are you still with us, EU? Okay, I don't think she's there. So we just move on to the next question.
Okay.
There's a question here which says how to deal with student situation where they have lots of loss of interest. I think this is loss of interest in studies, not much interested in pursuing studies.
Hello.
Okay, this has nothing to do with COVID. Okay, constant physical disconnect with the classmates and the institution due to lockdown and institution closure. Okay, so I think this is something that's completely different.
Hello.
But Dr. Preeti, I think what the question is here is very simple. How do you help students maintain their interest in studies, given it's all now online? So
Okay.
students are getting very disconnected with their classmates as well as with their teachers. So any
Correct.
tip on that?
Well, yeah, it's a very, very difficult question to answer because what is happening is but natural. So I think what can be done is to make study more interesting is to make the sessions shorter, smaller sessions, more interactive sessions, which I think the entire kind of curriculum has to work on itself, because our usual school curriculum does not work on being interactive. It's about a teacher standing in class, taking the lesson, and the students listening to it. And when students are in a class with a teacher standing there, of course they're scared of the teacher and all the students show interest. But when the students are sitting at their home and the teacher figure or the fear figure is not there, there would be some children who would not have an interest. And some of these children who don't show interest also could have some underlying neurodevelopmental issues. I'm not trying to scare anybody over here. I'm just trying to point out, because there could be some children who also have mild ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity kind of symptoms, who maybe it is easier for them to focus in a school kind of situation, but not in a home kind of situation. So if this reduction in interest and not being to concentrate on studies is too much or too much of a problem, more than usual than in other children who are facing the same situation right now, I think you need to consult a child psychiatrist or a child psychologist is what I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti. I think we've covered all the questions now. I would just like to wrap up today's session by thanking you once more. It was very useful and very informative. Before we wind up, I have a small announcement to make. Tomorrow, we're having another session on COVID-19 vaccination that is being organized by the United Medical Mission. I have shared the details. The details already shared in the chat box. Please do join our WhatsApp group to get more information on this. Today's session was brought to you by the Golden Breeze Foundation in association with United Medical Mission. Golden Breeze is a non-profit organization with a focus on psychosocial health and well-being. Together with United Medical Mission, it aims at improving the quality of life of people across all stratas of society. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Noor, and thank you, Dr. South, for this wonderful opportunity. It was great connecting to all of you and sharing some tips and whatever I could help in whatever way I could help you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.